So you've decided you want to build your own home. Now, unless you're lucky enough to already own a plot, the starting point will be to find a piece of land to build on. Now, this isn't always an easy process, especially finding exactly the right plot for you. But ask anybody who's built their own home and they'll tell you it's really worth sticking at it. An easy way to find a plot is to sign up with one of the national land databases. You pay a fee and then you can search their lists of plots that are for sale. But not all of the best plots ever see the light of day. Often they're sold off market. So it's a really good idea to contact people who are in the know. Timber frame house suppliers, architects, builders, they may all be aware of land that's just got permission but hasn't yet reached the market. If you manage to find out about a plot before it's come to the market, you might just be able to do a deal with the vendor. When it comes to buying a plot though, do not consider buying a piece of land that hasn't got at very least outline planning permission. It's just too risky to gamble buying a piece of land that has got no hope unless you buy it conditional upon getting planning permission. One of the few exceptions would be if you're buying a very old rundown house with potential for replacement, because there's usually a presumption that will allow you to put a new house in place of the old. When you've found a piece of land that you think is right for you, you need to assess its development potential, and in particular, the scope for making sure the design you want can be built there. So it's worth talking to the planners, to planning consultants, to experts like architects and timber frame companies that will really understand the development constraints, the planning constraints, and give you a really good idea of whether the house will fit on the plot you found. In terms of the size of house you can build on a plot, there are a number of things to consider. One of which, of course, is your available budget, but it's also important to understand what the planning constraints are on the site in terms of coverage and in terms of the number of stories. There are practical considerations too, especially when it comes to the building work. You'll need somewhere to store materials, you'll need space for builders to park, and if you're going to build a post and beam timber frame house, you'll need somewhere approximately 3 meters wide for a crane to access the site and then lift the frame sections into place. Once you've found a plot, the next stage is to start thinking about your design. Now, the architectural design teams at your timber frame post and beam supplier will be used to designing houses. They'll be doing it day in, day out. So they'll be able to help you create something that's traditional, contemporary, barn style, or perhaps a hybrid that combines the best of old and new. They'll definitely be able to help you. They should have lots of examples of plans they've worked on with other people too. Now, be aware that it's not a quick process. You really need to spend time thinking about how you live and making sure that your floor plan reflects that. You also need to understand the characteristics of your plot to make sure you get the very best out of the views, the orientation and the topography. There are lots of factors to consider, not least of which is your available budget. In terms of build cost, there's a fairly predictable average cost for building a house, but then you can easily double your budget depending on your choice of quality of fixtures and fittings, the specification if you like. If you really go for it with a lavish specification, you can spend huge amounts of money. In terms of the cost of the post and beam frame, that's typically going to be from 18 to 33% of your total build costs. And in terms of actual cash price, that ranges from £20 to £45 per square foot, including delivery and erection of the frame. In terms of build costs, taking your design through to a completed dwelling, average costs are around £180 to £200 per square foot. That's £1,900 to £2,100 per square metre. Now that cost will vary according to your chosen specification, the quality of the fixtures and fittings you decide to put into the house. Another variable though is your chosen build route, whether you decide to hand the whole project over to a main contractor to build and then hand you the keys when it's finished, or you might decide to act as your own building contractor, employing local subcontractors and supplying the materials yourself. That will save money. Or of course, you can get involved in the building work yourself on a DIY basis. Most timber frame companies have books of plans, things they've built for other clients before. Now, you could build one of those, but the reality is most people look to individualize their design. They take the best of lots of different ideas and create a hybrid that really suits their own aspirations and ambitions, and of course the characteristics of their plot. Now, The same style frame could be clad in any number of different ways. The external materials, the window style, the roof covering can all be different. So one floor plan could be changed to suit a very different part of the country. For instance, a house that's covered in brick in one area could be covered in stone in another and look really quite different, but otherwise be the same on the inside. In terms of costs, if you want to try and reduce costs, there is some flexibility on the amount of oak you include in the frame. You don't have to have a full oak frame. You could just focus the oak on the parts where you really want to see it, perhaps internally, and in doing so, keep down the cost of building in oak. Once you've finalised the design of your post and beam timber frame house, a structural engineer working in conjunction with the architect will design the foundations based on the point loads of the timber frame. You can hand that drawing over to a ground worker who will then be able to build the foundations. It's very unlikely that the foundations and oversight slab will be built by your timber frame supplier, but they are likely to have a list of local contractors who can undertake the work for you. When your ground workers are there, they will also need to bring in the services. Now, some plots are already serviced, meaning that the gas, electricity, water and so on are already on the edge of the plot, and your ground worker team will just need to do the work to bring those and connect them into the house. If you have an unserviced plot, you'll need to make all of the arrangements yourself with the utilities for drainage connection, water, gas, electricity and so on, but your ground worker team will still be responsible for the work on your site. In terms of the encapsulation, the frame around your post and beam structure, that will also need structural support, but that will be taken into account in your foundation design. Choosing to build a timber frame post and beam house is just the first of a number of choices. You could build in traditional style, what you might think of the Shakespearean style houses, the black timber with the white wattle and daub infill panels, or a more contemporary style. In fact, this house, contemporary in style though it is, uses a system that is not that dissimilar from those Shakespearean houses, except for instead of the wattle and daub panels, you've got glass. This is what's known as an exposed timber frame. Externally, you can see how the house is built, you can see the structure. But equally, you could have what's known as a concealed frame, where from the outside, you wouldn't know whether it was a post and beam frame at all, because it's wrapped either in timber cladding, brick or stone, and its structure is indistinguishable from any other house. On this timber frame house, the post and beam frame has been completely encapsulated and covered in this timber cladding. So you can't see the frame at all. But that timber siding could just as easily be brick, stone, render, hung tile, or any combination of those to suit your design ambitions and what the local planning authority are looking for. What attracts many people to building in timber frame post and beam is the exposed structure, and that brings with it in itself a number of choices. You could have a very smooth oiled finish like this one here that's really quite traditional. You could have a frame finish that's much more rustic, or you could really sandblast it and bleach it and have a very, very contemporary frame. The style of the frame is also a choice you can make too. You could have these structural beams here, these braces either curved or straight. It's very much down to the aesthetic look you are trying to achieve. It's also a very flexible build system because the internal walls are not load bearing. It's these posts that are load bearing. So you could have the layout completely open plan like a traditional barn. The design flexibility created by that structural post and beam frame isn't just lateral, allowing open plan layouts. It creates vertical flexibility too. So you could have double height rooms, galleried landings, or beautiful cathedral ceilings like this one here. So you've chosen to build in post and beam, you've chosen your timber, the finish you want, and the style of the frame. What about the panels that go in between? Well, most timber frame post and beam manufacturers offer a variety of different infill panels, depending on whether you're going to go for an exposed frame or an encapsulated frame. An encapsulated frame is where on the outside the skeleton is completely wrapped in a separate, airtight, very well insulated exterior shell.
So there's a good few types of encapsulation system. You can have SIPs, you can have stick build, where you can have a cellulose insulated natural encapsulation system. You can have many surface finishes on the outside of the encapsulation systems. Our general ones would be brick, render, feather edge boarding. We could have tile hanging in particular areas, but generally speaking, it's brick and a weatherboard. The things you should consider when choosing your encapsulation system is the whole package. Is the system going to integrate well with the oak frame? Is it going to be the same company offering both packages? And what's the likelihood of them being able to meet your site deadline? The other things to consider are the eco-credentials of your house, whether you need it to meet a certain code level or whether you're particularly interested in using the recycled materials. What makes a good encapsulation system is having an inbuilt air tightness membrane that's put in the factory, so it's one less thing to worry about when you get to site. An airtight building doesn't have any drafts, so the air you heat on the inside of your house doesn't escape through the envelope. A breathable building lets the water vapour migrate from the inside of the house to the outside of your cavity. This ensures that there's no mildew or mould inside your house, and it creates a much healthier living environment inside your home.
If you want to build an ecological house, there are lots of choices for scoring those all-important eco-credentials with your timber frame post and beam house. You need to be thinking about glazing. You could even go for triple glazing if you wanted to. You need to think about air tightness and insulation levels in the floor, the walls and the roof. Those elements will particularly impact on the heat requirements of the house. And then you can integrate the heating system itself with underfloor heating. And then finally, there's options for renewables. You could integrate solar panels to produce hot water, photovoltaics to generate electricity, or instead of a conventional boiler, you could use a renewable system like an air or a ground source heat pump. Having major parts of the house pre-manufactured off-site can really help to speed up the on-site build program, so the timber frame and the encapsulation can be erected on-site in a matter of days. Just how long the overall build program takes very much depends though on your chosen build route and how involved you plan to be yourself. Almost always the fastest route is to use an experienced main contractor on a turnkey basis.
The client's journey will involve obviously the planning process which they've already received. From that point they will go into a frame design, so their oak frame timber design will be worked on. Following the completion of that, we'll have the softwood design team will draw up and finalise those drawings. So the main contractor will start work on site. That'll either be a main contractor that we've recommended through our partnership scheme or a contractor that the client has already engaged themselves. That will allow us to come on site, erect the oak frame, erect all our softwood encapsulation system and complete our works on site. On average, to build the oak frame encapsulation, floors, eaves and verges, we work around 1,000 square foot per week, and the size of our houses varies, anything from 1,000 square foot, anything up to 7,000 or 8,000 square feet. When looking for a contractor to carry out your timber frame, one important aspect, as well as the quality of that company, is also the consideration that they take on a health and safety perspective. Health and safety is one of the most important things to consider, and you want to be working with a company that takes pride in their health and safety and keeping everybody working on that site safe. One of the key things self-builders should consider is where they're actually going to live during the process of building their house. Some clients like to live in a caravan on site, some like to live in rented accommodation near the site, or some stay with family and friends nearby. One of the key things that the client can do in the early stages is get the ground conditions tested on site. This will allow the engineering for the foundation to be designed and continue the project on smoothly. Sometimes without doing this, it can hold up the project and delay the process and start on site.
When it comes to choosing the interior style of your timber frame post and beam house, you probably have very firm ideas of what you want to achieve. But if you want some help, most manufacturers will have interior designers who are used to working with oak frame houses. You do need to think at a very early stage in design just how much oak you want on show and what sort of finish you want, because it's a beautiful feature and it will be integral to your interior design scheme. So if you've decided that a post and beam timber frame house is for you, what should you be looking for when it comes to choosing a supplier? Well, the most important thing is to choose a company that is going to be able to build the house that you're looking for, because no two companies produce exactly the same product. So get the brochures, visit the websites, but go and see the houses in person. Almost all of the manufacturers will have projects that you can actually go and see, feel and touch, and quite often you might be able to meet people who've built the houses too. Next, you want to make sure that you're dealing with a reputable company with a good, solid trading history, and you should also find out about what the payment terms are. How much are you going to be paying up front as a deposit, and how will your money be held? Most of all though, look for a company that's got a really good trading record. It's been around for a while and really specialises in building post and beam houses for self-builders, because then they'll have all of the support network around that you're going to be needing on the journey. I think it's really important to work with people that you get on with, people that you really think have an empathy and an understanding for what it is you're trying to create when building your dream home.